Hello and welcome. You're watching WION. This show is called Gravitas. I am Anchal Vora. We're bringing to you two of the most important stories that are playing out in South Asia. Is of growing concerns in Bangladesh of terror ideology, Jihadist ideology picking up, rise in radicalism in India's neighborhood in Bangladesh. That is what we're discussing the first 30 minutes of Gravitas on WION. Now, Bangladeshi workers have been deported from Singapore, 37 of these Bangladeshi workers over the last 1 year. That apparently for propagating jihadist ideologies. It underscored the fact that many Bangladeshis are coming under the influence of extremist Islamic groups. Last May, Singapore's Internal Security Department seized a document titled "We Need for Jihad Fight." The document seized from 8 Bangladeshi radical suspects, and although incorrectly worded, it was a chilling read. It was also a list of possible assassination targets who included people from government, law enforcement and media. Bangladesh police say that most of these deported suspects are migrant workers with no affiliation to existing terror outfits in the country. And we've got our guests lined up for you now. Let's introduce our panel that we would be discussing this with. In our studios, Gautam Leri is a senior journalist. Also, sir, congratulations. You're the president of the press club. You won that very important election.
Thank you very much.
We've got also Major Retired General Jahan Chaudhary, security and international relations expert from Bangladesh. He would be joining us soon. And we're joined by Sanjay K. Bhardwaj. He is visiting fellow of IPCS. Also a professor at Jawaharlal Nehru University. Welcome, gentlemen, to WION. Thanks very much for giving us your time. Let me begin this with you, Gautam. What's at play here? Now, extremist ideology in Bangladesh has been there. Jamaat-e-Islami in Bangladesh from the time of 71 war essentially has been wanting imposition of Sharia, and of course they don't want democracies and they don't want elections. So that has been there. Now, when you have the Dhaka terror attack that ISIS takes responsibility for, now when you have 37 of these Bangladeshis being deported from Singapore, what's at play? Are organized terrorist groups strengthening their hold in our neighborhood?
Well, one cannot deny that what is happening in Bangladesh, that now the youth, particularly youth from the elite class, are being found to be associated with the terrorist groups. But what Bangladesh government is trying to say is these are all homegrown terrorists. They have no link with IS. But now they gradually what we find that even from Singapore, where the people have been deported, they were carrying certain things, incriminatory documents, and they had some plans to kill a few leaders or the army officials of Bangladesh. So definitely Bangladesh government should look into it. But point is it is also true that all the terrorism, history of terrorism in Bangladesh is quite different from the history of terrorism of other Islamic countries. What you rightly, when you started, and you have picked up quite correctly the threat from 71.
Yeah.
So when Sheikh Hasina in the last election, when she promised that if I come into power, I will fulfill the unfinished task of the 71 war, liberation. What is that? That is because 3 to 4 lakhs of people were butchered, women were raped. So they formed the International War Tribunal where they tried to bring to the justice all those people.
That process is on?
That process is on. So people, those who are actually against the liberation war or the ideology of the liberation was not on the basis of any religion. It is a Muslim country. It was a Muslim country. 89% people are Muslim. Still, they have a secular constitution.
They're also Bengalis. Yeah.
So it's definitely quite different from other Islamic terrorism. That those who didn't believe in so-called liberation, and liberation struggle was on the basis of a mother tongue, right to
So you're saying that while there is a concern that Bangladesh government must address, but this is a different, different sociology at place. It's a different society from perhaps it cannot be compared with other Islamic nations where Islamic quote-unquote terrorism is picking up. Let's go to our guest from Bangladesh, General Chaudhary. Sir, should Bangladesh's government be in denial? Is it in denial according to you? Because ISIS keeps claiming credit for several of these attacks, but the government says these are only local outfits. According to our understanding, there are two major local terror outfits, Ansar al-Islam and the new Mujahideen, Jaish-e-Mujahideen terror group. I'd like to ask you if you think Bangladesh's government is in denial when it comes to major global terror networks trying to expand their presence in Bangladesh or not?
First of all, I'd like to highlight one aspect of this this claim game. If I may put it so, whenever there is a terror attack, you'll always find that there are several claimants. Just take the Quetta Police Academy attack in Pakistan very recently. IS claimed it. A splinter faction of Taliban claimed it, and also there is a point has been fingered towards the Lashkar-e-Jangvi, which is a Sunni extreme terror group. So similarly, whenever there is an incident in Bangladesh, we often find that there are several claimants. And there are several splinter Islamist groups. Some are very local, and some could be inspired from the Middle East or the Afpak region. So this is a very this is a flux and a bit confused situation. So before precisely pointing out which is the right claimant, it needs some time. And we all know that the IS or ISIS has got a global vision, and they're trying to put their footprints in Libya, in Yemen, in Afghanistan, and in other parts of the Islamic world. Whether they actually have presence or not, there might have some people who are other kind of radicals, or the IS inspired people, but not really physically connected. So there are these contradictory claims. Only after some period is passed.
Right. So you're saying that I understand what you're saying, sir. I'm sorry for interrupting you. I do want to bring in our other guest, Mr. Bhardwaj. He's written quite a fair bit on Bangladesh, and here in India looks at it quite closely. Mr. Bhardwaj, I'd like to come to you now. Gautam here sitting in the studio is talking about that there is a problem. The Bangladeshi society is a different one. It certainly has secular roots as well, despite being a state with a majority, where majority of the people are Muslims. And of course, that shouldn't have anything to do with whether you're secular or not. Our guest from Bangladesh, he says that it's a bit of a confusing state that Bangladesh is in right now. Several terror groups claim the attacks that are taking place, but for certainty, it is not known. Nobody really knows whether ISIS is behind or not, but ideology is certainly spreading. I'd like to ask you, Mr. Bhardwaj, in your view, what's really at play in Bangladesh? That ideological reasons, ideological groundwork, so to say, had already been laid, and now ISIS is a brand name that perhaps groups of young men there are picking up on? Or do you see a structured coordination between ISIS as it exists in Syria and Iraq and the youth in Bangladesh?
Yeah, thank you very much. First thing, let me start with where is the contention. The contention is in between the adherents of 1947 forces ideology and the believers of 1971. Now, adherent of 1947, they believe in Islamic nationalism, and they are basically old Muslim leaguers, and they oppose the liberation war of Bangladesh in 1971. The people who supported the liberation and the freedom of Bangladesh are the believers of secularism, democracy, but most important is the Bengali nationalism, and that is the core of that Bengali nationalism is culture and the secularism. Okay, this is one submission. The second submission, if you see the post 1971, the rise of radicalism in Bangladesh, I found it at three layers. At the macro level, level that the political leaders, basically the political parties and the military regimes, they symbolize the Islamic Islam and Islamism in Bangladesh by changing the nature of the constitutions. You can see that change the constitution and Almighty Allah, Bismillah Rahman, and everything was included. At the meso level, there is a clear-cut decline of Islamic scholarship, not only in Bangladesh but all over the world, and you can say in South Asia. So at meso level, that is also a thing that the Islam is not taught in properly in case of Bangladesh. But at the micro level where you started, you have started very rightly that the migrant labor. Where is the contention? Contention is that, you know, there is two types of Islam. One is Hanafi and one is Hanabali. The Hanafi Islam is basically having a syncretic kind of Islam that is in South Asia and having impact of Sufism and Persian and all that local cultural values. It is having contention with the current type of Islam imposed by the Arabian type of Islam that is known Hanabali. So what is happening? The Bangladesh migrant forces, they are going to the Arabian countries and they are serving there, and they are basically getting in touch with the Arabian kind of Islam, and what they are projecting before at home, back home, that whatever the Islam we are following, the Hanafi is not the true type of Islam. The true type, the authentic Islam is the Hanabali Islam that is coming, that the Arabian countries are basically following. So what is happening now? The labor migrant forces, where yes, I'm coming. I'm just for that. Wherever they are going, they are basically spreading that radicalism at the micro level, at grassroots level, and that has become a threat in Bangladesh. Now I'm coming on the network. What you are asking. Certainly there are network. The neo JMB are having nexus with the IS, and the Ansarul Bangladesh is basically motivated by Al Qaeda. But we don't forget the link. The ISI had been very instrumental in spreading Islamizing Bangladesh society, particularly from 2001 to 2006. So when you are looking that entire Bangladesh, what it was 20-80 ratio. Now it has become almost 40-60 ratio, that the 40%.
So it's increasing. It's on a rise. Mr. Bhardwaj, let's make it
a clear-cut threat. No,
Mr. Bhardwaj, let me
come
bring
one more point. But this present government has.
So allow me to make it a little more interactive and have the other guests come in too. But please go ahead and finish your final point, the point you were making.
Sure. No, final point, but if you are looking the present government, this present government has come down very strongly against terrorism and countering and combating terrorism in Bangladesh, and particularly this artisan bakery terror attack and the other attacks. And what is that? This present government had established a coordination with the international forces or the countries like US, UK and India, and of course with China as well. So now this government is coming down very strongly against terrorism. Let's hope that how far it will go. I will cover.
Right, let me bring in Gautam Lahiri here. Gautam, you've heard what Mr. Bhardwaj has had to say. That was a detailed analysis of essentially what's at play, and this is not just the problem with Bangladesh, but also several other parts of the subcontinent, including India. I was recently in Kashmir, and essentially the ideology of a moderate Sufi Muslim is sort of changing into a more radical Muslim, and there are preachers there in south of Kashmir, which has been the hub of protest this time around, who basically follow the hardliner thought of Islam, and that's what they're spreading. Ikmat-e-Deen, you know, the time of trouble for Prophet Muhammad, not the time when he was really governing people. So this is perhaps the root of the crisis here, you know, the ideology, this hardline ideology, and not the moderate Islamic ideology. But to be specific to Bangladesh, which is also a South Asian quality here, that it is the culture, can that be a bulwark towards hardline jihadist ideologies in South Asia, focusing on Bangladesh?
Exactly. So actually there is the other side of the story of the so-called terrorist outfits, that even after this Gulshan attack, you know, the one important, very well respected the Islamic scholar who almost issued a fatwa against the terrorists, After that, 1 lakh imams, they have signed a petition condemning those terrorists that during the month of Ramzan, a real Muslim can't do that. In Ramzan period, you cannot do like that. So that's the other side of the story. The Bangladeshi society is not totally divided between rightist or the secular or the liberal.
The kind of protests that have taken place there.
And also there were protests against the militants. So it is not a pan-Bangladesh picture. I don't agree with that phenomenon. But point is that even people of Bangladesh, they have now realized and they are resisting themselves. The people have come out, they have formed a citizens committee to look or to keep a watch on those elements. So people are concerned because they feel that perhaps their freedom would be lost. So that's another fear which cleverly Awami League government is pursuing among the people, spreading among the people. Look, even in this last conference where she has been re-elected again, that was the message. Look, your freedom is sacrosanct. People are at work to to make it again,
So essentially what you're saying is
colonial
it
country.
certainly is not a pan-Bangladesh picture. And in Bangladesh over the last few years, we've seen all kinds of protests. We've seen students from madrasas come out, more Jamaat-e-Islami supporters coming out and protesting. But we've also seen group of common people in Bangladesh who call themselves Bangladeshis first, Bengali first, and then Muslims later. And they're proud of their heritage, whether it comes to their religion or their culture. So we've seen those people step out as well. So when we talk about these terror attacks, the ideological groundwork that's been laid, something that we have spoken about, but what are the terrorists really looking for? They're clearly looking for popularity, they're looking to make their name, and they're looking to name it quick, and that is perhaps one of the reasons that they attack foreigners. Now, a court in Bangladesh on Tuesday has formally charged 7 people, including a senior politician of Bangladesh Nationalist Party, in the murder of an Italian citizen. Mr. Tavella was killed in September last year, with the attack later claimed by the Islamic State. Now, we've got Bangladesh, our correspondent in Bangladesh, Saad Hamdi. He sent us this report. Have a look at it, and after that, we would also like to talk a little about political parties in Bangladesh and their links or supposed links with terror outfits or jihadist ideological centers, so to say. Have a look at Saad's report.
Cesar Tavella's killing was one of the first attacks made on foreign nationals residing in Bangladesh. Security has been beefed up since the attacks were made on foreign citizens in the country. A Dhaka court has fixed the beginning of the trial from November 24.
Tabella Cesar, he was killed by some miscreants in September last year. We could find out the perpetrators of these killings, and the man who provided them with arms, the man is still hiding. Charge sheet was against him. His name is in the charge sheet, and the other guy who provided the money and gave the order to kill a foreign national was Mr. Qayyum Chowdhury. Charge sheet was submitted against 7 persons.
Bangladesh has been rattled by the resumption of militant attacks since 2013 after some years of respite. Warnings have been issued by diplomatic missions, including British and Australian High Commission and US Embassy, about big terror attack in September last year. July has seen the worst terrorist attack in the history of Bangladesh. Political analysts have time and again said that these terror attacks have resurfaced as a result of a void in the democratic process. The charge sheet and the beginning of the trial of the accused in the murder of Italian citizen Cesar Tavella is a step towards redress. But only time can tell whether justice will be delivered or if these lives will become a victim of political vehemence. This is Saad Hamadi for WION in Dhaka.
All right, let's go to our guest in Bangladesh, Major Chaudhary. You've, of course, been following details on that story as well. Now, that attack claimed by ISIS, the Dhaka cafe attack claimed by ISIS, ISIS releases pictures of the attackers in that cafe attack, but Bangladesh's government says that they have not been able to prove a link between that attack and ISIS based in Syria and Iraq. Now, this sort of is not a specific answer that Bangladesh's government is giving out. Should it be presumed that Bangladesh's government is just shying away from this concept because are scared of international interference? Or would you say, as you've already said, that the situation is confusing and Bangladesh perhaps needs more time in order to uncover what really is at play in Bangladesh?
Very interestingly, in case of Bangladesh, as of now, it appears that in some of the incident, the international link, there is some bit of international link, and in other cases, those are more kind of local. Okay, so let me put the first, the other kind of incident first. For example, the opposition in Bangladesh is often claims that the attacks are taking place because there is the absence of democracy in Bangladesh. Because in the last election, the main opposition did not participate, assuming that it will be rigged. So their narrative is that since there is no democracy in Bangladesh, so these kind of attacks are taking place as a reaction to the absence of democracy. So when in case of Cesar Tabela, now police is uncovering a link of the attack with a opposition politician. So now the government narrative is that, well, they are claiming that because of the absence of democracy, such attacks are taking place, and the opposition are probably linked to those attacks. So the government is trying to find or investigate whether there is a connection between the opposition party and one category of attacks. In case of the 1st of July attack in Holy Artisan Bakery, the people who were identified, and their handler Tamim Chaudhary, who was identified and later on killed in another operation. So it was found out that there was a network, and that guy Tamim Chaudhary, he's a Canadian Bangladeshi, and he had some Middle East connection and probably some IS connection. So in one or two cases, there are indications that some people are IS inspired, or they have got some communication with the IS. If not, even if they don't get any physical assistance from the IS.
But they are so inspired. All right, let me bring in, I'm running out of time here, sir. Let me bring in Mr. Bhardwaj for the final word. Mr. Bhardwaj, so we heard our expert from Bangladesh as well. There are several things at play here. He's saying that in some cases it appears that there is some sort of a connection, that there is some sort of an inspiration at play, but a direct link so far Bangladesh hasn't managed to establish. I'd like to ask you about Bangladesh's politics and the political involvement, the involvements of some of the politicians, as one reads, as far as terror in Bangladesh is concerned. Bangladesh Nationalist Party, Khaleda Zia's party, has been allies with Jamaat-e-Islami, and essentially Jamaat-e-Islami is out on the streets saying that the people of Bangladesh shouldn't have any closure to the war crimes, so the genocide that was committed in Bangladesh in 1971. So as far as politics of Bangladesh is concerned, and this growth in the radical elements or radicalization of the youth there, how would you analyze the link of the politicians or the politics of Bangladesh with growing fundamentalism?
No, I think it's the things in Bangladesh is not that easy. It's very complex. But let me make it more clear that the society and polity in Bangladesh is vertically divided, polarized into two forces. One is centered to the left, and that is led by Awami League, and left parties and left ideologues are supporting, and the another is centered to the rightists, and what you correctly talked about, the Jamaat-e-Islam and all that is supporting. So what is the problem? What is happening in Bangladesh, particularly 2006 on after 2006, that the secular and the liberal and the cultural forces had become very dominant, and that has been basically more projected and supported by the Awami League by winning the in 2008 election. So what is happening? The opposition political forces led by BNP and Jamaat-e-Islam had lost their ground at grassroots level, and now they are frustrated what actually they were doing from 2001 to 2006. Now they have lost the ground and support from the people, and what is that in this frustration that the opposition, they used to do hartal and politics and street and bandh. Now they have moved towards the political violence and throwing the cocktail bomb and violence and killing the
Right.
people and all that. You know, this frustration had been used by the external forces and the external terrorist groups like IS and like Al Qaeda, and that ISI is they are taking the advantage of the domestic
external
situations.
terror groups,
So what is
Mr.
that? There is
Bhardwaj is
alliance
saying, I'm
between
sorry,
the
sir,
domestic
I've run out of
political.
time. I do have to come in here. Your deep analysis is highly appreciated here, but there is an issue when it comes to television discussions. Time, that's essentially the issue. We'll of course keep inviting you. Mr. Bhardwaj there making his point that the external terror networks perhaps find the atmosphere internally in Bangladesh ripe to be utilized for their own means. There is of course jihadi economy also at play, something that the economists in Bangladesh have written quite at length about. So will the culture of Bangladesh continue to be the bulwark that Mr. Leri here thinks? Will the confusion in Bangladesh government of whether it is just local terror groups, what sort of support are they getting from the external established terror networks, would that be soon resolved or not? These are some of the important questions that we've got to seek answers for.